We've had a bit of a reset, haven't we? Now, this sort of situation where people get spooked is where the opportunities lie. We'll talk about Ethereum, we'll talk about Bitcoin, we'll talk about the dominance charts, but also why September can be a bit iffy and why a lot of people dismiss the past data. Let's get into it. Now, insert spooky word here: dips, crashed, plummets, whatever. But the bottom line is we were somewhat expecting this, I think, anyways. Let's talk about it. We'll go through it in the analysis. But you can talk about obviously certain things here, profit taking, due to, at the end of the day, right? This was a 7 week run we've been in. It's been a while since we've been at these levels. We obviously had the Jackson Hole, certain words were said, and it kind of created a bit of a spook. And it spooked the other way, as in we had a bit of a short squeeze. Now, the reality is, I want to say it, we are in a mini alt season, and you probably haven't realized it because over the last 4 or 5 weeks, Bitcoin has been dipping, slowly just been chugging away downwards. Whereas Ethereum's done really well, a lot of the altcoins have bounced, and more importantly, Bitcoin dominance has dropped quite a significant chunk. The situation we have now is obviously this: we have the psychological levels around 105 and $100,000, which I will talk about. Now, again, moving over to the other side of the market, we have a $14.6 billion haul, expiry bias for Bitcoin protection here. Yeah, this could be fun. So just be mindful of this. Obviously, it's a huge expiry on Friday. The derivatives market going into September. Now, September is the worst month for equities. That's just the factual nature of it. We are pretty much tied to the equity market. It may well be a bit sluggish. It may well be holiday season. And then obviously we have that Q4 element where everything is a bit mental. And it always is, and weirdly, I don't know why. That's the thing. It's just the way the market is. The market is very cyclical between quarters. Q1's a bit Q2's normally all right, Q3's a bit and then Q4 is usually pretty good. It all goes around the equity market, goes around profit taking, taxation, all that kind of stuff. Not to mention, we've got Ghost Month as well. But on the screen, as you can see, there's a lot of option calls here. It could be very, very fun. And that's the thing, this market's getting bigger, it's getting more mature, the numbers feel more gripping and grabbing, but ultimately we are a lot more stable, especially if you're in the Bitcoin market. But again, I mentioned just before, insert word here, has surrendered the rally, why it didn't bounce. And that's the thing, we didn't react. Bitcoin has not reacted, and that's the weird thing. And that's the thing that I don't like. It hasn't reacted, but it could also be a deeper pullback. But what has reacted is altcoins. Altcoins are still doing okay. Dominance is still dropping. So let's get into the charts. This is the Bitcoin chart. It's not looking amazing, as you can see, and it has kind of played out, I wouldn't say as I expected it to, but this is like an old fib from a while ago. And obviously there's new high here technically. So 108,608 levels in and around where this previous rejection has been would be a good area to be. Obviously, we've got a bit of an area where we can kind of put our little orders in for that situation. But ultimately, it depends on where you want to be. For me, I think we're going to get a bit of a hungry hippo market at some point. If we go low enough, I think people might grab it, especially Bitcoin. Now, with Ethereum, it's a different side of the story. Obviously, it's doing really well. People are getting momentum on that. The ETF inflows and all that kind of stuff are doing well. The situation is, how low does Bitcoin go? What does it do? Does it spook the market? Does it do certain things? So, yeah, it's one of those. It's an interesting point. Don't chase the green candles, but ultimately we are in a correctional wave here. It's very, very obvious. We've had an all-time high, we've had a new low pretty much, and a new lower high, and then into the new low here. This could be a settling point. But months ago, I mentioned, are we going to do a similar sort of pattern to this, or a similar sort of pattern to this, where we kind of just flop around for a while and it gets very, very dull, very, very boring. I don't know if we're going to continue with that situation, but ultimately this is looking more interesting in terms of where we're going to go next. Probably a bounce up into these levels again. Are we going to just range? Maybe. That's a good possibility as well. So thing is, with an alt season, so to speak, or an altcoin opportunity, we need Bitcoin to be relaxed. We need it to be sideways, chilled out. It kind of isn't right now. So we'll see where it goes next. Now, last week, I talked about this exchange here, and I just kind of used an example for volume. And the volume on spot is actually, Bitcoin is higher than Ethereum now on this exchange, which is mad when you think about it, considering last time I looked at this, it was the other way around and actually 3 times the amount. But that's just obviously that side of the market only in spot. In terms of futures, by the way, just going to give you an idea, when we're talking about the overall volume, it's still Ethereum beaten. But it's one of those situations, it depends what's hot. And right now, with Ethereum not doing as well as what it was, it's going to drop off a little bit. We had our all-time high retest. But by the way, if you're interested in this exchange, it's totally free to sign up. There's no KYC. It's open to the UK. So everyone in the comments goes, can I trade futures? Yes, you can. Jump in before the links get closed off. So let's talk about this Ethereum all-time high retest. We did it. We created a new all-time high. And that is the first time we've been able to say that for a long time. It's been one of those situations where Ethereum has really lagged. And I know a lot of people in the comments go, oh, here we go, it's boring. But we have lagged massively. And it's not been a great bit of fun at all if you've been an Ethereum holder. Until recently, obviously. So it is looking pretty good. The only downside I would say to this is I hate the idea that we're going to have an all-time high retest, but we're going to go back down to the previous levels of resistance. And it is I mean, I know you're on mobile, most of you, and you can't really see that, but that is a very, very crazy set of candles. That is a 3-day time frame. That is the daily time frame. We're still creating a new high. We are still on the EMA 21. We still are in structure points. We have had a lot of weakness on the RSI overall, but I don't want to go into September with momentum weakening. I want it to remain somewhat settled and strong. But realistically for me, I think there's going to be a bit of a rotation into certain markets now. Certainly when we look into September, it might chill out a bit, but it might prime us for some real opportunities to get in the market. Certainly we've seen recently Chainlink do well. We have. We've seen ENS and ENA or whatever. We've seen Aave do well. All these Ethereum-led tokens, I think there's Aero as well, randomly. They are Ethereum-led tokens, the DeFi world, and they're doing very, very well. And even today, you can look at the main competition for Ethereum in terms of derivatives markets is obviously Hype. That is doing really well. So it's certainly interesting to see where the market's going right now. But as I say, with regarding this is a really interesting chat. Now, for me, my fundamental opinion is we're going to get a dramatic repricing if we get a clear break at this all-time high. I see us going to around this 7,000, maybe a bit higher in terms of that situation, but we need to get there. Obviously, we need to break out. We need to have that really strong core element. But realistically, what we need to do, obviously, is duplicate what happened here once we got above all-time high. We'll really go turbo. Whether that happens or not, whether we get the liquidity or not, I don't know. Now, even looking at the Ethereum inflows, doesn't look that dramatic, does it? No, it's absolutely fine. There's still, yeah, some came out, some gone in. It's fine, but it's still positive. Regardless of that, even the Bitcoin one, not too dramatic in my opinion. What I think's happened is it's not so much institutions that are leading this kind of like drop off. I think it's just people over leveraging. I think it's people getting too cocky, too greedy, and they think it's up forever. This market is hard. It's a hard trading market if you're into it. And I've seen many, many people get destroyed. So follow the money, not so much follow the charts, because I think what you'll find is you will get absolutely bludgeoned at a certain point. But even though I mentioned before, is it an alt season? Well, technically, we're going to talk about the dominance chart and what is really interesting. And today I'm going to be doing a bit of a deep dive in terms of this on my Patreon. There's a link below. There's a 90% off for your first month. Use code 390. By the way, there's a lot more videos on Discord and all kinds of live streams on there now. But the sad reality is people will probably not see this as an altcoin experience because Bitcoin's gone down. Remember, your USD price is hugely important with what Bitcoin is doing for your altcoins, right? But we are at 53. It's not quite an alt season yet, but what we are seeing is green on altcoins and red on Bitcoin. And dominance is still dropping. Now, that's a situation. You can look at all these kind of situations around the numbers and the total days. They are pretty ugly. They are pretty horrible. But the reality is here, it is a lot higher than what it was. It is looking a lot better. But that is because certain things have done incredibly well recently, as you can see here. But there's a lot of assets that could realistically outperform Bitcoin very, very easily in a very, very simple bounce. Certainly at Bitcoin ranges. You know, when I say about all this market's different, look at that, right? So the red means alt seasons, the orange means Bitcoin seasons, and the green means neutral. There's a lot more kind of situations around neutral or red. But when we go into like this sort of era, it really does go very, there's not much red at all. This market is very different. So let's talk about dominance. Let's talk about what the overall share is. But first, let's go on to the market cap share for the USD side of it. So the stable currencies still relatively high, still chugging up, still doing really well. Last 7 days, growing quite dramatically still, in my opinion, which is good. That shows that there's a bit of on-ramp in, so to speak. Now, the reality that we need to talk about, and I'm going to start off a little bit left field here. Total 3 slash USD without, with that removed, so to speak. This is where we are. And we're still low. And there's still, in my viewpoint, opportunity. Now, I know many people disagree, and feel free, if you're new around here, feel free to engage in the comments on what you think. But I believe we're going to see a smaller altcoin run this time around, mainly because I think the top assets will run and the minimal ones at the bottom won't, versus last cycle for obvious reasons, right? So what we're seeing with this is obviously we're still in my viewpoint quite low. This is the low, this is the low, and we're not that far away. Whereas we have to look and gauge where to take some money out the table if you're in altcoins or if you're looking at certain things. Now, as an investor, I'm not so much massively into altcoins at the minute. I've got a couple. I'm doing a DCA challenge on my Patreon and stuff like that. But for me, there's three little things I want to talk about, which is kind of going to hopefully make it sound obvious. When this is high, it's time to take profit, obviously, right? Obviously, buy the low, sell it higher. There's obviously a big gap there. There's a big gap there, obviously. I don't know if we're going to get this high, personal opinion. Now, again, you look at the total 3 slash BTC, we have only just broken above this level. That's a bit of a warning, by the way, just, if you want to blueprint that and kind of make a little tick box, that is really interesting. Now, obviously, I've marked it before. We failed. We need to get above that level and continue. What we have done, we've had a change of character. We have created a higher low. It's looking a bit better. Just going to put that point out there. So what this chart is it's a total 3. It's minus Bitcoin, it's minus Ethereum in the BTC pair would indicate when altcoins are kind of running against Bitcoin for the first time in a while. That is giving us a situation where Bitcoin dominance is actually going down. Now, I've highlighted this chart. I've did this on Patreon. We have bearish for altcoins. We go higher. We've got a potential base case where we're going to go into the 50s, and then potential bull market activation if we're going to go below that region where we've seen before in the past where we're getting this sort of nuke. But it all depends on the ferocity of it and how aggressive that move can be. Problem is, we're not quite there yet. So if we go down to here, we got to flop around, it's going to be a bit shit. It's going to be, bollocks. We're not getting a big run. Now, this hasn't been very aggressive in my viewpoint right now. It's all right, but it could be a lot better. And it will get to a point where it'll roll downhill. So it's doing okay, but it could be a lot better, as you can imagine. So we'll see where this goes, but 58.58, funny enough, in terms of percentage point is all right. But a lot of that is because of the Ethereum share, which is now at 14%, which is like turbo. It's done a really big bounce. It's the main weight of it. Even the likes of Solana's done an okay bounce, but nowhere near enough, and it needs to do much better. So yeah, going off obviously the Ethereum side of it, that has been an aggressive big boy bounce, and it went all the way down to 2019 levels, as you can imagine. Huge bounce, looking really good. Now, let's kind of round it all up a little bit and talk about the 3-point level. This whole chart needs to go lower, right? Again, same situation, right? As it gets lower, this is where your TPs will be, down. When it goes high, it's time to reinvest. I hope that makes sense, right? So we'll talk about it. This is high, you need to buy, right? When it's low, it's time to remove yourself. Put it that way. Likewise with the totals, right? When these are high, take profit. When it is low, you need to buy. Okay? Same with the Bitcoin dominance. When it's high, it's time to buy. But that's a bit different. But keep your eye on it. The final thing that makes it all come about is the other slash BTC. This is 125 market capitalization assets without the top 10, so to speak. It's a bit of a weird one. But it doesn't have the big boys and it doesn't have the stable currencies and it just has like the 100 whatever. Now, with this, we are still below that point. It's not looking ideal. It could be a lot better. And this is why I talk about opportunity. We are still in a downtrend. It still looks rather ugly and disgusting. We haven't quite broken out yet. So just be mindful. If you want to bid on altcoins, it might be a good opportunity to look at certain things at certain points. But I personally believe, and I'm going to talk about this on my Patreon today, feel free to jump in. I think there's opportunities across the entire top 25 where, well, you could probably argue maybe XRP is probably not in there. Maybe Ethereum might be a bit risk reward, a bit low now. But there is some good ones on there. There is some genuinely good assets that could do very well and could return some very big monies. But the biggest problem we have is Bitcoin, equities, all that kind of stuff, and how it's linked together. And September can be a bit wishy-washy and one of the worst performing months of the year. But ultimately, past performance doesn't indicate future results, does it? It could be a bit of a whoopsie. We could have a situation, we could have certain catalysts or news, and it could kind of, decouple. But that's unlikely, realistically. So for me, I'm keeping an eye on those dominance charts. I'm going to keep an eye on it. Personally, I'm still buying Bitcoin. I'm still doing it on the DCA challenge. I'm still buying Solana on the DCA challenge as well. And I'm enjoying that. And I want to be a bit more aggressive with that. But at the bottom of this whole situation, I mentioned it on my X account. We might be into the last couple of months of this cycle, which is for a lot of people pretty daunting, especially if you are a latecomer, especially if you're not even in the market. And I'm talking in the past tense or the future tense, whatever. And you may stumble across this video and you just started buying into Bitcoin in like October, November. You might be a bit late, but that's the thing. This market is an absolute cluster. It's hard, very, very hard market, hard to trade. For me, I found it very, very hard to trade, in my opinion. It's hard as an investor because of the longevity of it and how hard it's been. Luckily, I've been in Bitcoin. I've talked about if you bought Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, even XRP, or one of the other obvious coins, you would have been all right this cycle. You genuinely would have been from the FTX crash. But not everyone else looked at that. Everyone looked at them disruptors from the past. This market has changed. So there we go. I hope you enjoy. Like the video. If you want to jump in Discord, there's a free link below. And more importantly, subscribe for more. I'll be back very, very soon.